The Department of Children, Youth, and Families has one of the most important jobs in the state government, that of safeguarding vulnerable children and families. It comes with intense scrutiny, the kind that is often uncomfortable for top administrators. So more than a few eyebrows were raised this week when Searchlight New Mexico's Ed Williams reported the agency has been using the app Signal to encrypt communications during the pandemic. The agency has also admitted to deleting communications. Now, Republicans have seized upon this report, and Attorney General Hector Balderas is investigating. Indeed, much of what COAFD does is shielded by privacy for its clients. We all know that. But attorneys, Searchlight consultants say it's a chilling practice. Why does the agency, just first of all, why does the agency need to keep those messages?
Well, I don't really understand the agency's argument, so I'm probably not the one to ask on that. But I think that their argument is that, you know, they're protecting sensitive case files, information about children that should not fall into the wrong hands. However, the problem is that these are public records, and they need to, at minimum, be preserved. They might be encrypted, but there are two things here: the encryption and the destruction. Mm-hmm. The destruction of these automatically after the communication has been made is very problematic. I mean, even just in terms of keeping public records for the archive of history, mm-hmm. And the state library. It's not possible when they are destroyed automatically. So they indicated that this was a convenience to them because of COVID, mm-hmm. but always as an open government advocate, we ought to ask what are they hiding? What is it they are hiding here? And some of it may be sensitive information, but remember, the information used by the public and reporters through IPRA requests is usually based in identifying some issue. It's not in revealing a personal case, mm-hmm. but it's identifying a pattern of child abuse or foster care. Or grandparents' custody of children that are no longer in the custody of their parents, mm-hmm. And that information, if it's hidden, really hinders policymaking.
Interesting points there. Wow. Brian Blaylock, the COAFD secretary, says if they didn't delete messages and shred other communications, they'd run out of space. But I don't recall seeing that provision as an exemption in the state public records law, that they ran out of space and so it's okay to destroy things.
And I think that may be an issue, that technology is outpacing the open mm-hmm. records laws. Now with so many people communicating via text, via Signal, or these other kind of apps, mm-hmm. That I think that is a concern, like Dee Dee mentioned, and I think the question of how widespread this is in state government is still unknown. I mean, clearly CYFD has been using it, but whether other agencies are using similar kind of apps or tools like that to communicate. On the one hand, I understand that people are working remotely and need to be in touch with each other, but I agree that it's incredibly troubling, to have these records that are being automatically deleted and not have access to them for the public and for the media like us to review them and to look at them and use our best judgment on what might be newsworthy.
Sure, absolutely. Hey, Ed Perea, maintaining records, it's time-consuming, undoubtedly requires either literal or virtual space, as we kid here. But do courts sympathize with this in your best judgment, or is it just a bad look?
I think it's highly problematic on the face of it, and I don't think it'll pass judicial muster. I think these are government agencies, mm-hmm. and the government agencies and its employees answer to the taxpayers. And I think over the course of the past several decades, transparency has been on the top of the list of concerns, yep. and really the expectation of the public. So I can see this going before the court, and there are a lot of issues involving transparency, especially when you look at the mission of this particular agency. CYFD, it's so critically important that there is full transparency, and there has to be some level of oversight. I understand the arguments. I don't believe at this point, based upon what I'm seeing and reading, that these arguments are going to hold up in court. I think transparency is ultimately going to rule the day, just because the public has a right to know what its agencies, what its government agencies are doing. So it's more to come, but I don't expect the courts to uphold this sort of communication that's taking place with CYFD. But of course, more to come.
Ed, I got a question. Is there a reasonable middle here? I mean, is there a point where you don't have to keep records after a certain amount of time? I wonder if there's another, situation on the state agency that they might be able to follow. Say, like if they were 3 years old, 10 years old, is there a reasonable time to get rid of some of these things if issues of, keeping these around are an issue? Is that reasonable?
Well, there's always the exceptions, right? And it depends on the issue. In court cases, some of these court cases can go on for decades. So, and especially when it involves children, and again, the mission of CYFD, I would think that the court would expect these records to be held on to for an indefinite period of time. If that means 30 or 40 years, maybe it does. But I think when we're talking short term, I don't think that serves the interest of this of transparency is ultimately what I think the taxpayers and its citizens are expecting from its government agencies.
Yeah. Dee Dee, we've got about a minute here, but I mentioned Republicans have seized on this. They were awfully quiet, however, when Susana Martinez used private email to conduct public business. This kind of thing does happen because New Mexico's transparency laws are toothless. Is that why? Or is this just everyone decides on their own to freelance these things?
Everyone decides on their own to freelance. I think that's a good. Summary of it. And of course, the Republicans are seizing on this as a political issue. The Democrats are seizing on this as a political issue in the prior administration. The Attorney General should be investigating this. And our watchdog groups, New Mexico Ethics Watch, FOG, and others should be really monitoring this because this is important for the public. It seems like a sort of arcane issue, but it really goes to the public's right to know what is being done in its name. And in this case, to children by the government.
Yep.
And I think that's pretty important.
Good point there. Hey, Dan, real quick, Governor Lujan Grisham hasn't commented on this. Can she avoid it, or might this be the kind of story that only gets a little bit worse the longer it's ignored?
Yeah, I think that there will be questions to her about whether other agencies are also doing this. We'll see, obviously, what the AG or some of the other groups kind of come up with and what those investigations lead to. But I think this could be the kind of thing that has some legs. And I think it does kind of bring into question public trust in government, and how much of it is happening behind closed doors or where people can't access.
Well, if we're just talking dumping texts and things like that, I mean, I don't know, I could get 2 terabytes worth of information on a little plug-in C-clip, so we'll have to see how that goes. We'll keep an eye on this for sure, but we're out of time, though. A closer look at the new COVID response when this group comes back.